There aren't many places left where true exploration is possible. To shine a light where none has ever been. This is such a place. It is exploration's new frontier. This is only for the experienced divers. You can take a wrong turn and be lost forever. It's as alien as space. That's one reason they dive these underwater caves, to risk the unknown. But part of exploration is a longing to understand the world around us. And these explorers, who came for the adventure, have opened a new environment for scientists. It's an underground river that offers new sources of fresh water to a thirsty world. And something else. They have discovered organisms here that exist as they might have lived at the beginning of life on Earth. Join us for a dangerous journey deep within a subterranean world, where secrets wait for new explorers.
This program is made possible by the United States Postal Service. 750,000 employees committed to delivering their best every day to every community. The U.S. Postal Service, we deliver.
Hello, I'm Bill Kurtis. These caves were formed thousands of years ago, when the sea level was much lower. People lived in here. Now, when the Earth's climate got warmer, the sea levels rose and sealed them forever until cave divers began exploring. Well, what they're discovering could be very important. They're finding new sources of water from Mexico, and they found a much bigger mystery. What kind of environment allows organisms to live without light in these caves? We join our new explorers in the pursuit of adventure. And we find a scientific mystery.
No one has seen this place before. The two divers ahead are driven by that idea. It's what real exploration is all about. It's located in the Yucatan Peninsula, a giant hook on a map under the Gulf of Mexico. Close up, the network of underground tunnels falls near the tourist resorts of Cancun and Cozumel. It's called Nohoch Cave, honeycombed in the limestone beds that once were on the bottom of the sea. Charting it would become an obsession for our team of new explorers. Imagine a tour of Carlsbad Caverns with the person who discovered it, or a trip through the Grand Canyon with John Wesley Powell. This tour group is just as lucky. Their leader is Mike Madden.
One thing that we do ask that you do is you make sure that you keep your mouth closed, because you'll have a tendency to do this. Because it's really very beautiful.
Mike's life was changed forever the day he discovered this cave. It happens like that, face to face with the unexplored. He had to know where it went and how far. He would name it Nohoch Cave, Mayan for giant birdhouse.
I like to think that, aside from my family and my children, that this is probably the single most important thing that I can do in my life. It's something I can leave behind. It's a piece of work like a writer writes a book, like a painter paints a painting.
Mike Madden's mission to explore led to hundreds of dives. Teams of cave divers laid 140,000 feet of line, charting 26 miles of passages, all underwater, and established a Guinness World Record at having discovered the longest underwater cave in the world. But it wasn't enough. The exploration has taken his dive team to within a few miles of the sea. To break out would be a stunning achievement. It would be the first documented proof of a Yucatan underground river emptying into the Caribbean Sea. Now on the verge of a breakthrough, others have come.
How's it going, Brett? You got the data being dumped yet?
Dr. Tom Iliff, a marine biologist from Texas A&M University, whose specialty is the study of the underwater cave environments and the creatures that live within them. In a world in which discovery of new life forms is extremely rare, Dr. Iliff's discoveries are astounding.
In my work, we've found 2 new orders, 4 new families, 32 new genera, and nearly 100 new species of organisms living in these cave systems. So these animals are not just new species, they are new higher groups of animals, types that had been previously unknown from anywhere else on Earth.
And cave divers made those discoveries possible. Members of Mike Madden's team like Eric Hutchison, who charts the twists and turns of the cave, and then transforms the measurements into maps that allow the scientists to follow. It's a symbiotic relationship: adventure, science, and art.
When I'm old and washed up, and bent, decrepit, or whatever it is that's going to happen to me, I want to be able to look in a room and see a historical document of the world's longest underwater cave system at that date. And I really think at this cave that's very attainable. I want to be the cartographer of the world's longest underwater cave system.
Eric Hutchison, Mike Madden, and Tom Iliff represent a merger of sport, science, and art. Together, they have set out on a journey to explore, study, and map deeper into the Earth's underwater system than any humans have ever been before. To get an idea of where the team would begin their journey, I traveled with Mike Madden to the entrance of Nahoch.
Eric, what do you think about deco on this dive?
Well, about the only thing we can do is go put some tanks in the ocean just for safety, huh? Just in case.
Yeah. I'm kind of concerned about those pits we're going by.
Yeah, man, they're deep.
Just to get to the cave is an adventure. Mayans will help pack the dive gear onto horseback.
¿Listos, señores? Okay, vámonos.
Tanks and underwater scooters strapped down tight. It's a 2-mile hike, a transition from a modern to a Mayan world.
Why do you keep coming back again and again, looking for another one more dangerous than the other, bigger than another?
Well, the thrill of exploration, there's nothing like it. And I think all of the explorers on our team would agree that Nahoch and the project that we do here provides us with an opportunity of a lifetime. I mean, I think we all feel that this is probably one of the most important things we'll ever do in our lives is the exploration of this cave.
The difficulty of what is almost a daily trek for the dive team is a measure of how much he means that. With tropical heat and insects, it makes the cool water of cave diving inviting.
The same kind of
We came into a clearing, the small farm of Don Pedro, the owner of Nahoch cenote.
Now, this looks exactly like what I would expect the Mayans to have been living in.
Well, it's exactly the way the Mayans have been living for thousands of years. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Yeah. Hola, Don Pedro. ¿Ande? Sí, tenemos que dar otra vuelta. Dame presentar un señor. Ese es el señor Bill Kurtis
How
de
do you
los
do?
Estados Unidos, Don Pedro Rodriguez. This is the rancher.
Well, he's been very helpful to you, hasn't he?
He's my friend, my partner, and a big part of what we are able to do here is because of his permission.
The cenote plays an important role in the Mayan way of life. Cenote means sacred reservoir in Spanish. To the classic Maya, all natural openings into the earth, whether caves or cenotes, were portals to the other world. They believed that their ancestors and gods lived in that other world. For thousands of years, cenotes have been used as places for ceremonies, sacrifices, and drinking water. According to myth, a Maya king will rise from a great cenote and join the Maya once again.
Well, here we are. I'd like to see your reaction of the first reaction to the entrance to Nahoch.
Is that amazing? Why, there are even stalactites there.
Well, these are the ones that are still in the air. Wait till you see the ones underwater.
It is like an opening to Carlsbad or Mammoth.
Except that it was filled with water. What would it be like to swim through Carlsbad caverns? The tanks would be for Mike's main dive team. They do it the old-fashioned way, by hard work. Before the main expedition gets underway, I want to get an overview by snorkel. Mike gives me a special peek at the cave that his tour groups don't see. Well, I'm interested in trying to find the reason that you were really turned on with cave diving. So maybe we can recreate that moment, shall we?
Let's go check it out.
Okay.
I think you're gonna be impressed.
Okay, well,
All right.
let's try.
Let's go.
The entrance is deceiving. A gradual slope of rocks stops at a ledge. Where the bottom then drops out. We're in a huge room, floating 30 feet above the floor, still able to breathe from air pockets carved into the ceiling. This was Mike's discovery, and his favorite place on Earth.
We're going to go from here around the corner into an area that we don't normally take people to, the fairly low ceiling. But I want you to see this room because it gives you a little better view of what the cave looks like inside. Maybe
Great.
try to answer some of that question of why we go there.
I'd like to see it. We'll still be able to breathe from the air pocket on top.
There's an airspace all the way around. You just follow the line. The main thing is to just keep your mask partially out of the water so you can see where the rocks hang down.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Lead the way.
Okay, let's try it out.
We moved into a room full of needles overhead, a ceiling of daggers.
Let's go, Bill.
Okay.
Okay, let's keep our your head kind of up out of the water so we don't bang our heads. And we're going to see a little line here coming up on the right. And this is going to keep us on the right path.
Michael, what a spectacular room. Look at this. It's cascading down. These formations, unbelievable. This is beautiful.
little duck under here. We got a duck under. Watch it.
Wow.
Take a look.
Look at this. Look at this. Now, what's that all the way up in the center there?
Those are stalactites.
Wow.
Forming in the top of a little dome.
Uh-huh.
And there's this formation right here. It's very interesting. It looks almost like an old ancient clamshell or something that was locked into the reef. Because you got to remember that this all of this rock at one point was the bottom of the sea, about 60 million years ago.
It's like a fairyland. It really is amazing.
And there's the magic of it right there.
That's the kick, and now I'm beginning to understand. That's exploration, isn't it?
It is.
Well, let's go.
All right, further back.
It's not hard to keep in mind this place is special. But hardly the narrow passages the main dive team will encounter on their way to the sea. Just the thought of discovering a room like this would intoxicate a diver and keep them coming back again and again.
Wow, look. This looks like it's forming.
That's it. All of the formations here on the surface.
Look at that.
The water's dripping off the end, and just as it drops off, it leaves a little tiny bit of calcium carbonate behind. You can see on each one of these droplets right here, the water dripping off, and it makes this flow stone here.
That example was all around us. And what creations from such a timeless process.
10,000 years?
10,000 years ago.
Back during the Ice Age?
Yeah.
And
Is when a lot of the formations that you see underwater were formed, of course.
Uh-huh.
The ones underwater don't form anymore.
Uh-huh. Think of that.
So you have the same kind of beauty. All the stuff you see underwater is...
Well, you've convinced me.
Have I?
Yeah, now I see why you do it.
I think it's probably the most beautiful cave on Earth.
Wow. I think I would have to agree. Now how do we get out of here?
We swim, of course, past columns and flow stones that are astonishing. We'll come back with scuba gear, but it gives me an idea of why cave divers risk their lives to go deeper and deeper into systems like this. Maybe the Mayans were right. It is a place worthy of the gods. Today, the Yucatan Peninsula rises just a few feet out of the water like a table of extremely porous rock that stretches for several hundred miles. Just a carpet of green tropical trees clutching to what used to be the bottom of the ocean. Below the surface is another world. 100 million years ago, it was a warm, shallow coastal sea where marine animals and calcium carbonate, the stuff of coral reefs, began to layer deposits, one on top of the other. During the ice ages, when the climate became colder, causing the sea levels to drop, it revealed one of the greatest limestone platforms on the planet. And that's when the cave building began. Rainwater trickled through fractures in the limestone, causing erosion. As it passed through the ground, the water also created a weak carbonic acid, which helped dissolve the rock. The result was the magnificent cave structure like Nahoch, speleothems, rooms and corridors within the limestone. It all happened when the rock was dry, above the sea. Later, when the climate became warmer, the glaciers on the continents and the polar ice caps melted, and the sea level rose to flood the caves and sealed them forever. After hundreds of dives, Mike Madden's team knows Nahoch is heading toward the sea. The question is, where does it come out? From the air, Mike discovers a large outflow of water near Casa cenote. They'll dive here next to see if they can connect from the sea.
Man, it's as hot as an old cow field in Florida.
I think we've got probably 1,200 to 1,500 feet of line to lay.
The more line that we lay up there, the closer we are.
Their goal is to swim upstream from the ocean into the flow toward the Nahoch system and make a connection. If they're successful, it will be a fantastic feat, since they are still over 2 miles from the closest known entrance. This will be their first dive here, and they have no idea what to expect.
What we're really doing is we're following the water. The water created these caves, and we're just running our nose upstream, nose in the flow, just like a salmon.
Cave diving is considered by many to be the world's most dangerous sport. Over 360 people have drowned in North American caves since 1960. Many have died through carelessness. But even with intensive training, equipment, and technique, even then there are no guarantees. Over 20 of the sport's best technicians have drowned deep inside underwater caves within the past 5 years.
Cave diving in any cave system underground cave system is very dangerous. It requires a tremendous amount of planning. It requires a tremendous amount of logistical forethought. You need to answer questions that could affect you before you go in the water. Before you even get into the water, you need to ask those questions and have them answered. The potential for disaster is there at every minute. Only the planning and the experience of the team prevents that, with a little luck.
Not knowing the conditions they may encounter, the team decides to bring additional cylinders, which will be placed inside the cave for safety.
You get those bailout bottles in there, you get a really good level of confidence, and it's not a false level of confidence, because if you can manage any type of a failure mentally, you can get back to your air station and exit the cave normally. Just keeping that mental perspective. That's the hard part. You need a little luck these days.
Joining Mike and Eric on this dive is fellow explorer Chuck Stevens. For the past 3 years, Chuck has been the leader of the downstream exploration of the cave. He is the most experienced in the identification of the type of passages they'll be looking to explore.
Okay, guys. Ready to call it?
I'll show the time down at 3:22.
3:22 it is.
Crossing the basin, the team spools out the guideline that will show them the way back. It will also serve as a survey line to measure their progress toward a connection. These are mangrove roots reaching down from the trees above. The divers realize they may be exploring a cave system, but it's also an important underground river, which has created a special ecosystem. It's like looking at a tropical forest from the roots up, discovering a world beneath the tree trunks and limbs and leaves. The cave entrance begins where the roots end, and there's a surprise. A guideline has already been installed. It means they have an unknown competitor. Now it's a race to connect Nahoch with the sea. The team decides to follow the line to find out what the mystery explorer has discovered. Gone are the beautiful rooms I saw. This is where cave divers spend most of their time. Narrow passages, close walls, loose rock, and always being aware of the rules to stay alive, never losing the guideline to the surface. It's the only hope of getting home. It's not unusual for a diver to come out of a tunnel into a room and then turn around to leave and find 4 passages leading out. Without a guideline, Staying alive is a guess. Air is the greatest concern. Each diver must always save at least 2/3 of their air supply to exit. They'll need it for unforeseen emergencies. In this beautiful yet hostile world, self-rescue is the only option, and time remaining within your air supply is measured not in minutes, but in breaths. Cave divers must also always carry 3 lights apiece and attempt to avoid silty areas. Silt robs the diver of vision and can plant a seed of stress, which can lead to panic in a world without light.
So as we swim through, if we'd bump these things or our exhaust bubbles hit them too hard, just a little bit of movement can dislodge them, and the visibility gets really bad. And exiting can be a real problem. You're not really seeing much. You're relying strictly on our equipment and our training and our experience and our methods to get out, following that guideline.
"1,500 feet into the system, the team realizes the previous diver's guideline has made a wrong turn. It's now heading back toward the ocean. Although they've been down over an hour, they decide there's still enough time to begin their search for Nahoch. Tying off their guideline, they will now enter an unexplored realm. This is where real exploration begins. Theirs is the first light to shine upon this passage since they were formed millions of years ago. The passage turns north. Their only limitation now is the amount of air remaining. Another 2,000 feet, and the passage drops to a lower level. They enter the inland-type cave they were hoping to find. They feel so close, but they've run out of line and have to turn back, learning another requirement for cave divers: patience.
Looks pretty good, about as good as we could expect. This has been perfect.
Wherever we find the cave divers, the scientists can't be far behind. Dr. Iliff is getting ready to explore the strange environment that he wants to test. It's 2,000 feet into a cenote known as Eden, where fresh water floats on salt water to form a most unusual environment, a halocline.
The halocline is a particularly unusual environment for the diver, something that's rarely encountered in other types of diving. We begin our dive in the fresh water, and the fresh water is typically very, very clear, as is most of the water within the caves. As we descend toward the halocline, we can sometimes see a slight shimmering from the layer, or a disturbance perhaps as we near it. As we enter the halocline, it's like entering another medium. Everything becomes wavy in front of us and distorted. We can't see clearly, especially the divers behind. As you're following another person in, everything that's clear for 1 second disappears in a shimmering haze. But as you break through the halocline and enter the salt water beneath, everything immediately comes into focus again.
Dr. Iliff is studying the halocline as a totally new environment. How thick is it? How do chemical and physical properties change across it? Why do nutrients seem to concentrate here? And whether the halocline moves when the tide comes in.
We find the halocline and tie off our sensors so that they are exactly positioned at the halocline. In this way, the tidal fluctuations moving up and down have moved the halocline past the stationary sensors of the hydrolab, and in this way, we can see what changes are taking place within the halocline.
The amount of life any environment can support depends on the energy available, especially sunlight, along with water, oxygen, and minerals. In the cave halocline, there's certainly no sunlight, so the energy has to come from somewhere else. There is oxygen in the water and minerals, and we know there are living organisms here. But what are they living on? The answers could give us clues about how life began on Earth.
We're learning a tremendous amount of information about the evolution of life on Earth. Many of these animals are very primitive, living fossil forms. Others are missing links between species that help to explain the evolution of life within the sea and life on Earth in general. On the way in, let's try and take a plankton tow. I need to get some more specimens of copepods and other critters in there.
With a team of graduate students, Dr. Iliff has discovered more than 100 new species of organisms living in the saltwater caves, 23 of them in Yucatan caves. And that's what's so strange. He's also seen their close relatives in other caves around the world, from the Pacific to the Atlantic. He's diving now to pursue the question, how have these similar organisms been able to evolve in different cave systems around the world?
Caves may not be limited to shallow water habitats. Perhaps caves are found at deeper depths on the sides of islands and the sides of continental slopes, going down perhaps even into the deep sea. In the deep ocean, along mid-ocean ridges, are systems of cracks, fissures, and crevices that may offer a habitat very similar to the cave habitat that we're observing now. If this is true, life may be distributing itself around the world through these systems of micro-caves that are essentially a global network.
In the winter of 1993, Dr. Rich Lutz of Rutgers University observed another strange organism, giant riftia, or tube worms that grow rapidly along the mid-Pacific Ocean ridge. They also grow 1,000 miles away at hydrothermal vents on the bottom of the North Pacific. Like the animals Dr. Iliff studies in the caves, these life forms are also dependent on bacteria. Could the bacteria that feed shallow water cave animals at various spots around the world be distributed through a network of fissures, a kind of global highway within the crust of the Earth? And could the answer be found in a Yucatan cave?
Our knowledge of cave biology and the cave habitat is similar probably to what was known about the world's oceans 100 years ago. There's a tremendous way to go, and we're just now beginning to get the first general impressions of what's happening within these cave systems.
To truly understand what is occurring within the caves, the scientist relies on explorers to chart the unknown.
Exploration and mapping of caves is a form of science because we're documenting through that what the extent of the environment is. It's only through cartographers being able to map features that we're able to effectively understand them.
Cartographers like Eric Hutchison, the data collector. His meticulous measurements become accurate pictures of the cave system.
As I'm exploring a new passage, I'm actually sketching features of the cave on my way in and taking notes as an observer would. You're actually, at this point, you're not a diver, you're not a caver, you're strictly an observer, and you're bringing information back.
It's known as Cartesian coordinate plotting, a technique where the explorer collects depth, compass heading, and distances between each survey station within the cave. Along with data and drawings on the cave's structure and formation, Eric will produce a map of the system.
Spectacular. Yeah, it really is a beautiful room, isn't it? It's huge. You can't believe how big it is. It really is.
Before the dive team's final attempt to connect with the sea, Mike and I have returned to the starting point with our scuba gear. To remember where the narrow tunnels of discovery could lead.
Look at this magnificent room. This is hard to believe. This formation that you're going to see over here on the right is called John.
into swallows. That's it. Incredible. Look at that. It's just cascading layer upon layer down to the earth. How does it make you feel, Mike, knowing that so few people have seen this?
Well, I feel very privileged, Bill, and I'm glad that you're able to see it with me.
It's unbelievable. Now, where are we heading?
We're almost to Heaven's Gate now, this huge formation you'll see right up ahead. What do you think, Bill?
I think it's appropriately named. Mike, this is the most magnificent thing I've seen. This is like El Capitan. It's the Grand Canyon.
And perfectly preserved since 10,000 years ago. No one's seen it before us.
Opening into a room almost like a cathedral, a church. You do feel a religious moment, don't you? Moment of inspiration.
It certainly gives you a thought about higher power creating something as beautiful as this.
Nature provides many things, and certainly this is one to parallel. Great parks, great trees, great canyons, and to be able to share this with people, you're a fortunate man.
Well, you're one of the first people to see the backside of Heaven's Gate. I think it's probably time for us to head home now, Bill, so let's head on out.
Thank you again.
It's easy to imagine this beauty as a treasure for Mexico, for its heritage as well as tourist dollars. But we live in a world never far from difficult choices. This is Calica, a jointly owned Mexican-American mining operation which exports limestone to the United States. At a time when Mexico is hungry for foreign income, limestone mined by Vulcan Materials is by far the state's largest export, a high-quality ingredient for cement. It's often a difficult choice between turning natural resources into millions of dollars and protecting the environment. But in this case, Vulcan tried to make it easier. Retired senior geologist Peter Wiese.
Up through last year, the value of the exports was about $73 million. Development generates employment opportunities for people. It generates financial return to people. It enables people to raise their standard of living. Those are the plus aspects of it. The negative aspects are the destruction of one environment and its replacement by another environment. It's a simple trade-off.
To make sure it would be worth it to Mexico, Vulcan spent $600,000 restoring Mayan ruins on its property, respecting the local heritage. And there was more.
When we finished the harbor, we donated it to Mexico. We gave it away, a $20 million investment to Mexico. This was part of the concession.
Wiese acknowledges that Vulcan could not avoid destroying one underwater cave in creating the mine's harbor. But he also knows the beauty of other caves, like Nahoch, remain untouched.
As a geologist, I know from the terrain and the geology here, there are probably many, many more Edens out in the Yucatan Peninsula that have not yet been discovered.
Ironically, it may not be a limestone mine which poses the greatest threat to the fragile cave ecosystems. This is Cancun, playground for tourists and the stopping off point for people wanting to visit famous Mayan ruins and sacred cenotes. 20 years ago, it was a pristine, undeveloped coastline. Now it's a city connected to the peninsula, packed with countless shops, 20,000 hotel rooms, and tourists. They create a lot of garbage, which threatens the very thing that attracts the tourists to Cancun, the water.
Initially, the garbage from the hotels and from the town of Cancun was hauled to the abandoned stone pits. It accumulated there, and the leachate from that has penetrated and continues to penetrate the waters of the Nichupte Lagoon.
It concerns scientists.
Sewage is being put in and injected into this groundwater layer. Also, large amounts of water are now being taken out of the reservoir for reuse in resorts such as Cancun, for example, and newly developing resorts along the Caribbean coast. So we have two problems primarily. One is extraction of water, which tends to lower the hydrostatic head and raise the halocline to shallower depths, eliminating the fresh water. A second problem is pollution of these groundwater resources.
A tough issue. How does Mexico use its natural resources without destroying one of the last great frontiers for exploration?
Caves are essentially an underground wilderness. Even in well-developed areas, we can enter caves and find areas that very few other people have ever been to. Even the tops of the highest mountains in the world have probably had many, many more people than most of these caves in Yucatan. So in this area, we're able to go into a new area, an undisturbed area, and visit it for the first time. We need to protect and preserve such environments because there's very few left on Earth.
Let's see if we keep this in between there.
Scooters are rocking back and forth and liable to break a handle off.
The team is getting ready for what they hope is the final push to the sea. They charted 4,000 feet of tunnels from the ocean opening, against the current, toward Nahoch. Entering the system at Balam Kanche, now they think they can make the connection by traveling downstream with the current.
This will represent the first time that any major system has been connected to the Caribbean Sea and directly prove that all of this water is actually going into the ocean.
Underwater scooters will buy them some time.
The real danger in this particular type of dive is that we're going with the current into the cave. And so as we go into the cave, we go in very quickly. It's really sucking us in. We go real fast, and then the danger is if we have a problem. So we've set up this dive so that we have additional scuba cylinders in the cave in the event that we have a problem to bail out with. Even with a diver propulsion vehicle, you're going very, very slowly on exit. That's really the major concern, is the visibility and the swimming against the current coming out.
This will be DS2. What's going to be interesting for me as well is to see the change in the geology. We're going from a very, very large passage into lower bedding planes, and I've also encountered some pits. Some of these pits go down to about 60, 70 feet. Boy, we just don't know what to expect. You know, and that's the thrill of cave diving, really.
Don Pedro's son uses a Mayan technique to smoke out a hive of bees in the entrance, an obstacle most divers never face. The underwater vehicles could increase their time underwater by an hour and help fight the current on the way back. To capture this dive, our new explorer's cameraman, Wes Skiles, and his cave diving partner, Tom Morris, will make the journey. They're both very experienced cave divers. As they gear up, each falls into a silent concentration. To be mentally prepared is important. Cave diving isn't just scuba diving. The danger is very real, both physically and psychologically. And this is not the place to make a mistake. The danger means some team members must stay behind. The entrance looks more like a mud puddle. Unfortunately, they'll see more silt than cathedrals on this trip. It seems more like flying than swimming. A new look of exploration into a new world, uncharted, unexplored, until the cave divers. Within 30 minutes, the going gets tough.
The downstream dives are definitely the most difficult, strictly because of the visibility problems that we create. Things move, visibility gets really, really bad, and then, of course, the siphon, it's downstream.
The downstream area has a tremendous amount of unstable cave formations where things are being eroded by the halocline. As you swim through an area, you may have rocks fall on top of you.
So we're like quite a ways from home. We're like Apollo 13, gonna have to go around the dark side of the moon to get to the sea on this thing.
It's been 2 hours. Time for the rest of the team to start to wonder how far they've gone and worry about all the things that could go wrong. But the team is making good progress. The underwater vehicles carry them along without effort, conserving energy for the ride back. They pass in and out of the halocline, through passages wide and tight. The water is cold, but that's not what they're thinking about. Over a mile into the earth, the team discovers the remains of what appears to be a dugong, an ancient relative of the manatee. It's a startling discovery, but it may be a good sign. Could it have come from the ocean? And how far would that be? The dugong has existed for over 40 million years. Are these bones as old as the cave itself? Or did the dugong swim in when the cave was only partially filled with water? Say during the Ice Age over 10,000 years ago. A few feet further, Eric discovers the remains of a turtle. Like the dugong, the turtle must return to the surface to breathe. To the divers, there's little doubt that both became lost in the twists and turns with no guideline to save them. Their discoveries are exciting. They're now sure they're moving toward the sea. The team has now traveled over a mile downstream toward the ocean. According to their map, only 1 more mile exists between their present position and the sea. If all goes well, the connection may be within their grasp. Tying off, the team begins to lay line into uncharted territory. The passage is small. They'll have to leave the scooters here. Silting becomes a problem as the current carries it back over the team. Only the lead diver now has momentary periods of vision. It appears that the system will not give up its secrets easily. Concern turns to fear. It's been almost 3 hours. The team should have returned by now. Team member Ruby Haupt has been through this before, and it never gets any easier. Finally, lights there in the water, followed by bubbles.
Bueno, huh?
Woo! Man, what a dive!
The camera team returns first.
Oh, unbelievable. I popped into one clear spot, and I could see the team. They were headed to the ocean. Yeah. It was so cool. I could see them, and they were going, and then everything closed in on me, and rocks started falling on me, and I said, man, I guess we're not supposed to be here. And I thought for sure it would be...
The others returned a few minutes later. It would be 10 weeks before Chuck Stevens and a partner would attempt to make the connection again this time from the sea. Silt blocks their vision as they discover boulders the size of houses. And then a heart-stopping moment. There in the faint light, they discover a guideline, the one laid from the other direction. The muffled sound of celebration comes from face masks. This is it. The end of 8 years of exploration. They've done it. They've connected the longest underwater cave in the world with the sea. There's a moment of hesitation. They take a vote. Should they try to survey the tunnel? The vote is no. Conditions are too difficult. Safety is always the most important consideration. They'll turn back and return to the sea, victorious. In the return home, they can enjoy the satisfaction that a monumental achievement is behind them. But this is only one cave. There must be thousands in the Yucatan. Bigger, longer. Other wonders are calling. These are truly new explorers, charting a new world with the spirit of adventure and the search for knowledge that could be found in all the great explorers of the past.
As you're exploring into areas that are just completely undisturbed by anything, not by man, not by anything, you're having a choice. Well, do I want to take door number 1, or door number 2, or door number 3? And unfortunately, you can only take one of those doors. And it's just a constant charge that makes you want to see what is on the other side of that door.
Serious, dedicated cave diving explorers are providing a vital role by collecting information on the habitat, by reporting observations to us, and by mapping and surveying the caves. Without their work, it would be impossible for us to study the caves in the manner and degree of detail that is necessary.
I can only hope that through the work that we're doing here in Nahoch and our connection of this to the sea, that the developers in the area will have a better appreciation of this tremendous resource that's here and the amount of water that moves through the peninsula underground and the quality of that water, and take that into consideration in the future.
There aren't many places left where true exploration is possible. To shine a light where none has ever been. We have been in such a place.